Can Kamala Harris beat Donald Trump? Latest poll updates. Vice President Kamala Harris will go head-to-head with Donald Trump in just 3 weeks as Americans cast their votes in the 2024 election. Senate races are now a stress point for the Republican Party, with an internal memo revealing that many GOP candidates are trailing Democrats in the polls. In the presidential race, several polls over the last week have revealed a shrinking national lead for Harris, meaning that with just weeks to go, the race is only getting tighter. Meanwhile, Trump is leading in multiple swing states, but the former president may be losing his grip on older generations of voters, with the latest New York Times polls showing the two candidates split by a hairline, and Harris ahead by 3 points. With nearly 1 in 10 Republicans leaning left, how will Harris and Trump fare in November? The latest average of national polls, collated by 538, shows Harris with a 2-point lead over Trump. On average, Harris has been marginally ahead of Trump in national polls for several months. Republicans are now concerned about Senate elections, according to an internal polling memo obtained by Politico. The memo reveals that, by the Republicans' own polling, their candidates are trailing behind Democrats in 7 out of 9 key Senate seats, data that's largely been confirmed by public polls. Those seats are in Arizona, Maryland, Michigan, Nevada, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. We still have a lot of work to do to maximize our gains in this critical Senate election. We also have to guard our flanks, writes the memo's author, Stephen Law, head of the Senate Leadership Fund. The memo also warns that strongholds like Nebraska and Texas could be at risk from independent and Democratic candidates. In Texas, where former presidential hopeful Ted Cruz is defending his Senate seat, the memo shows Democrat Colin Allred as just 1 point behind, a much tighter race than it appears in public polls. We are putting everything we have into this fight, so there is no looking back with regret, the memo ends. In a new poll from ABC and Ipsos, Harris is leading by just 2 points at 49% of the vote, and Trump at 47%. The same poll in September had a 4-point lead for Harris. The strongest shift has come among independent voters, as Harris's lead with them has dropped from 10 points to just 5. The ABC poll is not the only one showing a smaller lead for Harris, but the reasons why Trump has been picking up more support in this past month are not entirely clear, given that after the presidential debate, he has not attracted much positive press. It is possible that Republican VP candidate J.D. Vance's more moderate and measured debate performance has assuaged some Trump voters who were on the fence. One key issue may be the current state of the economy. The same poll shows that the majority, 59% of Americans believe that the U.S. economy is getting worse. Trump remains the overall favorite for who is trusted to handle the economy better, with 46% of voters favoring him over Harris, 38%. Despite the best efforts of the Harris campaign, ABC's polls have consistently shown Trump leading on trust over the economy and inflation. The latest set of swing state polls from Emerson College has Trump leading in 4 out of 7 swing states and Harris leading in just 1. The polls show neither candidate leading by more than 2 points in any battleground state, meaning that, just weeks before Election Day, the race is still far too close to call. Trump is now leading by a hair in Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania. Meanwhile, the candidates are tied in Michigan, where Harris previously seemed to be leading, and Wisconsin. The Independent's D.C. correspondent John Bowden reports that after Harris's honeymoon surge, the election is now truly anyone's ballgame. The poll also revealed that the Trump-Harris gender divide is wildly different in each state. In Arizona, for example, there does not appear to be a significant distinction between how men and women are voting. But in all other swing states, there's a noticeable gender divide, especially in Georgia, where Harris enjoys a 12-point lead among women, while Trump has a 14-point lead among men. The latest polls from the New York Times Siena College have Harris ahead by 3 points at 49% and Trump at 46%. The strongest support group for Harris remains young voters and those from non-white backgrounds. Trump's key base are white, non-college voters. Meanwhile, to the chagrin of the Trump campaign, the polls suggest that older generations of voters are no longer staunchly Republican, For both Gen X and Boomers, Trump's lead has significantly diminished over the last few New York Times Siena College polls. In fact, the two candidates are effectively tied among both groups, as Trump has just a 1 and 2 point lead, within he plus-minus 2.4 margin of error. While it remains to be seen how this might change in the final stretch, the Republican Party has won the over 65 set in every election since 2000. In addition, nearly 1 in 10, 9% of Republicans may be voting for Harris and abandoning party lines. Of 898 Republicans polled in early October, 9% said they would be voting for Harris next month. The same poll showed 5% in September. The gender divide between Trump and Harris voters remains strong, with women leaning left and men leaning right. There's been a flurry of interest around polls in Florida in the past few weeks, with Harris appearing to encroach on Trump's lead in his home state. In particular, figures from the historically Republican pollster RMG Research showed Trump with 50% of the vote and Harris with 48% in Florida, which is home to Mar-a-Lago and several key Republicans. However, new polls from the New York Times showed Trump ahead by a strong plus 13 points in the Sunshine State, at 55% to Harris's 41%. Though this is out of line with several recent polls in the state, New York Times analyst Nate Cohn suggests that this poll is not an outlier, saying, Mr. Trump excels in states where Republicans performed well in the 2022 midterm elections, as they did in Florida. As a result, this poll is not the usual outlier. If Florida becomes more solidly Republican in 2024, it suggests that the upheaval during and after the pandemic has had a lasting effect on American politics. The debate between Ohio Senator Vance and Minnesota Governor Walz turned expectations on its head, with betting markets and pre-polls eyeing Walz as the presumed winner. Not only did Vance win the debate, but his performance appears to have done wonders for his public perception, which had been suffering for months. Our analysis before the debate found that Walz led Trump, Vance, and even Harris in terms of favorability. Vance received an plus 11-point boost in favorability from the debate, according to the latest poll from YouGov. This leaves Vance in a neutral position, while voters had an overall mighty 11% unfavorable opinion of him before the debate. Most interestingly, Vance improved his favorability by an astonishing plus 19 points among Democrats. Although, overall, he is still at a net 52% negative score among this group. Walz also received a more modest 3-point boost, reaching 15% favorable in YouGov's poll. Although Walz's performance was not debate-winning, he is still the most liked candidate, and he even improved his favorability among independent voters following the debate. Among his own party, though, he lost approval from 7% of voters, still ending up at a net positive position of 72% favorability with Democrats. Snap polls following the debate show that viewers were split on both candidates, and Vance came out a few points ahead. A CBS YouGov poll found that 42% of viewers considered Vance the debate winner, compared to 41% for Walz. However, Walz did emerge as more in touch with the average American and more likely to share voters' vision for America. Regardless of political affiliation, the economy is the most important issue, impacting how people will vote in this election. A poll from Redfield and Wilton Strategies of 2,500 U.S. adults up to September 26 shows that abortion is considered the second most important issue for 37% of voters, followed by immigration at 34%. For Trump voters, however, these priorities are flipped. Over half, 57%, of Trump voters view immigration as one of the biggest issues, amid border security tensions and recently debunked claims from Trump and Republicans about Haitian migrants. Interestingly, healthcare and abortion are tied as the next most important issues for Trump voters at 23% each. Though Trump has advocated for overhauling Obamacare, with unsuccessful attempts during his presidency, he was unable to outline an alternative healthcare policy at the September presidential debate. Meanwhile, abortion is front and center for Harris voters, 55%, with Harris herself critical of abortion bans following the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Healthcare is also a top priority for Harris voters, 40%, followed by housing, 23%. A YouGov Economist poll has Harris with a 3-point lead among registered voters at 47% and Trump at 44%. The poll shows a wide 25-point margin for Harris among young voters, aged 29 and under. However, according to the same poll, the younger generations are also the least committed to voting, with 13% of the 18 to 29-year-olds surveyed saying they will maybe vote, while 3% will not vote or are still unsure. This amounts to 16% who are on the fence or not voting, higher than any other age group, and higher than the average of 9%. Just 65% of the 18 to 29-year-olds polled said they would definitely vote in November. This is in comparison to 77% of 30 to 44-year-olds, 85% of 45 to 64-year-olds, and 94% of the 65-plus age group. Though the numbers may seem dismal and represent a degree of hesitancy among younger voters, the overall picture is significantly more engaged than in 2020. The same YouGov Economist poll at this stage in the 2020 presidential election showed that nearly a third of young people, 27%, were not committed to voting in November, with 10% maybe voting and 17% definitely probably not voting. The Independent is the world's most free-thinking news brand, providing global news, commentary, and analysis for the independently minded. We have grown a huge global readership of independently minded individuals who value our trusted voice and commitment to positive change. Our mission, making change happen, has never been as important as it is today.